although by far the fittest persons, were thus forbidden entrance by the two chief doorkeepers of Sri Hari, while other divinities looked on. Their eyes suddenly turned red because of anger due to their great eagerness to see their most beloved master, Sri Hari, the personality of Godhead. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. According to the Vedic system, a sannyasi, a person in renounced order of life, is dressed in saffron-colored garments. This saffron dress is practically a passport for the mendicant and sannyasi to go anywhere. Sannyasi's duty is to enlighten people in Krishna consciousness. Those in the renounced order of life have no other business but preaching the glories of the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of God. Therefore, Vedic sociological conception is that a sannyasi should not be restricted. He is allowed to go anywhere and everywhere he wants, and he is not refused any gift he might demand from him. The four Kumaras came to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. The word Suritama, best of all friends, is important. As Lord Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita, he is the best friend of all humans. Suritam Sarvabhutam. No one can be a greater well-wisher friend to any entity than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is so kindly disposed towards everyone that in spite of our completely forgetting our relationship with the Supreme Lord, he comes himself, sometimes personally, as Lord Krishna appeared on this earth, and sometimes as his devotee, as did Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And sometimes he sends his bona fide devotees to reclaim all the fallen souls. Therefore, he is the greatest well-wishing friend of everyone, and the Kumaras wanted to see him. The doorkeepers should have known that the four sages had no other business, and therefore to restrict them from entering the palace was not apt. APT, apt, means wasn't the right thing to do, let's put it like that. In his verse, it is figuratively stated. In this verse, it is figuratively stated that the younger brother of desire suddenly appeared in person when the sages were forbidden to see their most beloved personality of Godhead. The younger brother of desire is anger. If one's desire is not fulfilled, the younger brother, anger follows. Here we can mark that even great saintly persons like the Kumaras were also angry, but they were not angry for their personal interests. They were angry because they were forbidden to enter the palace to see the personality of Godhead. Therefore, the theory that in the perfectional stage one should not have anger is not supported in this verse. Anger will continue even in the liberated stage. These four mendicant brothers, the Kumaras, were considered liberated persons, but still they were angry because they were restricted in their service to the Lord. The difference between the anger of an ordinary person and that of a liberated person is that an ordinary person becomes angry because his sense desires are not being fulfilled. Whereas a liberated person, like the Kumaras, becomes angry when restricted in the discharge of duties for serving the Supreme Personality of God. In the previous verse, it has been clearly mentioned that the Kumaras were liberated persons. Viditatma tattva means one who understands the truth of self-realization. One who does not understand the truth of self-realization is called ignorant. But one who understands the self and the super self, their interrelation and activities in self-realization is called vipassana. Although the Kumaras were already liberated persons, they never became angry. This point is very important. I'm sorry. They nevertheless became angry. I'm sorry, let's read that again. Although the Kumaras were already liberated persons, they nevertheless became angry. This point is very important. Becoming liberated does not necessitate losing one's sensual activities. Sense activities continue even in the liberated state. The difference is, however, that sense activities in liberation are accepted only in connection with Krishna consciousness, whereas sense activities in the conditioned stage are enacted for personal sense gratification. Okay, this is a very important purport, but let's just take a look at it a little bit more. I think these last couple of points are the most important. That is, the Kumaras were liberated persons, and they were able to understand the truth of self-realization. Then Prabhupada says, one who does not understand the truth of self-realization is called ignorance. But one who understands the self, the super self, and their interrelation and activities in self-realization is called Vididatma Tattva. That means they understand who they are. They are the eternal servant of Krishna. They understand who Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. And they understand that the activities in self-realization and devotional service are the real goal of life. So, but just because they are pure devotees, one may think, well, they should never get angry. But there are situations that the pure devotee may get angry. What are those? Well, when somebody insults Krishna or Krishna's devotees, they don't get angry when they are insulted. They tolerate it. But they will not tolerate people who insult Krishna or Krishna's devotees. So therefore it says here that although the Kumaras were already liberated persons, they nevertheless became angry. This point is very important. Becoming liberated does not necessitate losing one's sensual activities. Sense activities continue even in the liberated stage. The difference is, however, that sense activities in liberation are accepted only in connection with Krishna consciousness, whereas sense activities in the conditioned stage are enacted for personal sense gratification. So what is the difference now between sense activities and liberation? Are only in connection with Krishna consciousness. So when we chant, when we dance, we chant, dancing, and dance, chanting Hare Krishna and dancing. And when we go on Sankirtan, when we take part in hearing lectures, when we engage in devotional service, cooking for the deities, cleaning the deities, or the temple, all these things are sense activities where they're in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's why it says, becoming liberated does not necessitate losing one's sensual activities. Well, the Mayavadis, they try and stop all sensual activities through what they call meditation. So if you go to a Mayavadi temple, the main thing there is meditation. You walk in, people are sitting in the lotus, let's say, position, and it's all quiet and everyone's meditating. When you come to Hare Krishna temple, everyone's chanting Hare Krishna and dancing. So there's a big difference. And some people are put off by that chanting Hare Krishna and dancing. They think, well, the ones who are meditating quietly and peace, there's shanti, shanti, shanti. That's the real thing. And what the Hare Krishnas are doing, they're like dancing fools. But that's not true. See, when if you look if we go to the Chaitanya Charitamrita, whenever there is anything auspicious happening, the devotees are dancing and chanting. Now, do they meditate silently? No. They meditate on the vibration of the chant, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. They don't just sit there silently. What usually happens is, by the way, meditation, real meditation is when you're sitting silently, but with your eyes half open, half closed. If you close your eyes completely, you go to sleep. If you open your eyes completely, you get distracted by things. So you have to practice with your eyes half open, half closed, which is not easy to do. Most people think, well, I'll close my eyes. Well, usually they fall asleep. Now here it says that one who understands the truth of self-realization, that's called Viditatma Tattva. That was the position of the Kumaras. One who understands the truth of self-realization. One who does not understand the truth of self-realization is called ignorant. But one who understands the self, the super self, their interrelation, and activities in self-realization is called Viditatma Tattva. Okay, so here we have a definition of a person who's, in truth, this self-realized. That means he understands himself as the eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He understands the super self, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Their interrelation is through devotional service of the devotee, offering service to the pure devotee, and activities in self-realization. That is, everything that we do, waking up early, taking a bath, chanting Hare Krishna, hearing lectures on Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, going to Sankirtan, eating Om Prasadam, offering obeisances to devotees. There's this one devotee, at the time of Lord Chaitanya, every time he would see a devotee, he would give his obeisances. So every day he was giving obeisances to about 3,000 people. But that's what he was, he had such great respect for devotees. Every time he'd see one, he'd immediately give his obeisances. Okay, so although the Kumaras were already liberated persons, they nevertheless became angry. This point is very important. Becoming liberated does not necessitate losing one's sensual activities. Sense activities continue even in the liberated stage. Well, getting angry is a sense activity. The difference is, however, that sense activities in liberation are accepted only in connection with Krishna consciousness, whereas sense activities in the conditioned stage are enacted for personal sense gratification. Okay, now there's a fine line there. What is personal sense gratification as opposed to uh, sense activities in liberation are accepted only in connection with Krishna consciousness. Well, let's say you're in the temple and you're chanting around, and somebody, throws a rock through the window, breaks the window of the temple. Then you get angry and try and find out who that person was. You might run after them, try and catch them, and do what's called a citizen arrest. Citizen arrest. You're actually allowed to do that, and then you call the police. You hold that person against their will, and you call the police, and they come and they arrest the person after they find out, what happened. So that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. You know what? People should not be breaking the windows by throwing rocks at the temple or injuring devotees or in any way trying to hurt the deities. Devotees should be very vigilant not to tolerate these type of behaviors. The Prophet says, although the Kumaras were already liberated persons, they nevertheless became angry. This point is very important. Becoming liberated does not necessitate losing one's sensual activities. Sense activities continue even in the liberated stage. The difference is, however, that sense activities in liberation are accepted only in connection with Krishna consciousness, whereas sense activities in the conditioned stage are enacted for personal sense gratification. So when you have a person who insults Krishna, we should definitely get angry and chastise that person. If we are insulted, we should tolerate them, because who was insulted exactly? I mean, when we were insulted, it's our false ego, not us. And we can tolerate that, knowing that it's not the real person that's being insulted. It's the ignorance of the insulter, and actually the insulter is being insulted by speaking unworthy words toward a devotee. But the devotee for himself will not retaliate when he is insulted. But if the person insults another devotee, then the devotee will definitely become angry and chastise that person. So it says this point is very important. Becoming liberated does not necessitate losing one's sensual activities. Sense activities continue even in the liberated stage. The difference is, however, that sense activities in liberation are accepted only in connection with Krishna, whereas sense activities in the conditioned stage are enacted for personal sense gratification. So that means that if a devotee is, let's say, insulted, he will tolerate that, but he'll also try and explain to the person that they should not act in that way. There's no reason why the devotee should, well, anyway, there's a point. When you answer a fool with silence. So the best thing to do is just walk away when someone is insulting. Like we go on Sankirtan sometimes, there's always some crazy person talking to himself, and then when the devotees pass this person is chanting Hare Krishna, he starts screaming at them. You should just ignore that person's and walk away, chanting. But if that person starts screaming at the devotees and then tries to attack a devotee, at that time, we have a right for self protection and to subdue that person. And then, the police will come and so forth and say, what's going on here? Who did this? Who did that? And so forth. When subduing someone is only in the most extreme situation when a devotee is physically attacked. If only mental, let's say, misconduct, verbal misconduct, contact, then we can just keep walking away and not say anything, not get into any argument. So it says the difference is sense activities should continue even in liberated states. The difference is, however, that sense activities in liberation are accepted only in connection with Krishna consciousness, whereas sense activities in the conditioned stage are enacted for personal sense gratification. Well, that's the example. If we're insulted, we can tolerate that. If someone insults another devotee, we should try to explain to them that they shouldn't do that. If they're not willing to listen, then we should walk away and not continue arguing with a fool. I mean, or there are several things you can do. Point one, you can cut their tongue out, but that would be a pretty gory and harsh thing to do. But you might have to do that in some very extreme situations, but we would prefer just to walk away and ignore the person's, let's say, misconduct. Okay. Are there any questions about that?
Maharaj, in Bhagavad Gita, it is said that individual soul continues even in liberated stage. Is that what is corresponding to the sense activities happen in liberated state?
Yeah. My body used to think, liberated stage, there's meditating, there's no activities. You see, they want to stop all simple things by not doing anything, just meditating. But devotees, they stop engaging in illicit things and they act only in Krishna consciousness. They don't stop acting. Whereas the Mayavadis are trying to stop all thought, all actions, etc.
So, Maharaj, does that mean that anger, greed, lust, and envy, not envy, maybe anger, greed, and lust still continue even in the liberated stage, but in connection with Krishna?
Well, anger, yes. Lust, I don't think the Kumaras were lusty. Lust is not a very good thing. But there is justifiable anger.
Greed, Maharaj?
What?
Greed.
If you're greedy to have more Krishna consciousness, that's okay. What does that mean? It means you want to chant more, you want to dance more, you want to hear more classes and things like that. But you don't want, have more and more money and more sense gratifications. So greed, it depends what you're greedy about. If you're more greedy to hear and chant, well, that's good. If you're more greedy to have more sense gratification, that's bad. So that word, you have to be careful with the word greed, but it doesn't mean it's wrong in every context. It depends, what you're desiring. So if you're, let's say, very proactively desiring more hearing and chanting, that's not a bad thing. If you're more, desiring sense gratification, that is a bad thing. So depends what the motive is. Everything is judged by the motive. Okay. So here it says that anger will continue even in the liberated stage. These four mendicant brothers, the Kumaras, were considered liberated persons, but still they were angry because they were restricted in their service to the Lord. There you go. That's when you can get angry. When someone is restricting you in the service of the Lord. The difference between the anger of an ordinary person and that of a liberated person is that an ordinary person becomes angry because his sense desires are not being fulfilled. Whereas a liberated person, like the Kumaras, becomes angry when restricted in the discharge of duties for serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There you go. That's what we should remember. Become angry when restricted in the discharge of duties for serving the Supreme Personality of God. Okay, so. So the last sentence says the difference is that the difference between sense activities for sense gratification and sense activities in the liberated stage. The difference is, however, that sense activities in liberation are accepted only in connection with Krishna consciousness, whereas sense activities in the conditioned stage are enacted for personal sense gratification. So you can tell the difference. The sense activity is for their own sense gratification, one's own sense gratification, and sense activities in liberation. So, for example, when there's a festival and then you chant and dance, and then you get tired, you sit down, you have some nice prasadam. That's sense activity. But it's not independent of Krishna. It's all related to Krishna. Okay. Next verse. 32. The sages said, who are these two persons who have developed such a discordant mentality, even though they are posted in the service of the Lord in the highest position and are expected to have developed the same qualities as the Lord? How are these two persons living in Vaikuntha? Where is the possibility of an enemy's coming into this kingdom of God? The Supreme Personality of Godhead has no enemy. Who could be envious of him? Probably these two persons are impostors. Therefore, they suspect others to be like themselves. Now, that is a very, very significant statement. It says, who could be envious of him? Probably these two persons are impostors because they suspect others to be like themselves. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that is a real, hard statement. If a person is crooked, then they think all people are crooked like themselves. Right? And if a person is regularly, lying and cheating, they think that everybody is lying and cheating like themselves. So, purport by Srila Prabhupada. The difference between the inhabitants of Vaikuntha planet and those of the material planet is that in Vaikuntha, all the residents engage in the service of the Lord himself and are equipped with all his good qualities. it has been analyzed, but in other words, it's not that people stop doing things when they're in Vaikuntha. They're doing the same things they were doing in the material world, devotional service. The devotional service doesn't stop in Vaikuntha. It has been analyzed by great personalities that when a conditioned soul is liberated and becomes a devotee, about 79% of all the good qualities of the Lord develop in his person. And we can never emulate 100% of the Lord, but we can go all the way up to approximately 79% of all the good qualities of the Lord. Why? Because we're not God. We are jivas. But 79% of all the good qualities of the Lord, that's huge, huge personal development. Most people never even reach that point. Therefore, in the Vaikuntha world, there is no question of enmity between the Lord and the residents. Enmity means arguing, anger, jealousy. All those points are in the word enmity. Enmity means type of anger, jealousy, and so forth. Look up that word, enmity, enmity.
The state of feeling of being actively opposed or hostile to someone or something.
Right. Hostile or what?
Hostile to some, opposed or hostile to someone or something.
Hostile or opposed to someone or something. Yes. Enmity.
Animosity, hostility.
Animosity, hostility, so forth. Therefore, in the Vaikuntha world, there is no question of enmity between the Lord and the residents. But yet, there is anger, but it's justifiable anger. Here in this material world, the citizens may be inimical to the chief executives or heads of state, but in Vaikuntha, there's no such mentality. One is not allowed to enter Vaikuntha unless he has completely developed the good qualities. The basic principle of goodness is to accept subordination to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the quality that we're actually looking at. When a person naturally is subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The sages, therefore, were surprised to see that the two doormen who checked them from entering the palace were not exactly like the residents of Vaikuntha Loka. It may be said that a doorman's duty is to determine who should be allowed to enter the palace and who should not. But that is not relevant in this matter because no one is allowed to enter the Vaikuntha planets unless he has developed 100% his mentality of devotional service to the Supreme Lord. No enemy of the Lord can enter Vaikuntha Loka. The Kumaras concluded that the only reason for the doormans checking them was that the doormen themselves were imposters. Oh, that's a very, very strong point. It is. The Kumaras knew who they were. They themselves, they actually were devotees. But the doormen who were stopping the Kumaras from coming to the Vaikuntha were not actually completely completely pure. They had some impurity to them. And because of that, they were not able to recognize the transcendental purity of the Kumaras. So the Kumaras concluded that the only reason for the doormans checking them was that the doormen themselves were imposters. Okay, so let's see what happens now. This is very interesting.
Mhm. So this means like even if you enter Vaikuntha,
Yeah.
There is a possibility of some contamination with it.
The point is you can't enter if there's contamination. You can come up to the door of Vaikuntha, but you can't enter.
They are at the door.
Hmm.
They are not inside.
Inside.
No enemy of the Lord can enter Vaikuntha. So the Kumaras concluded that the only reason for the doormen checking them was that the doormen themselves were imposters. Well, that means that the Kumaras who know who they are devotees of the Lord, and they're not trying to enter Vaikuntha for sense gratification. They have a right to come because they are controlling their senses and engaging always in devotional service. So why did the doormen not understand this? Because they themselves were not completely pure. Next verse, 33. In the Vaikuntha world, there's complete harmony between the residents and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just as there is complete harmony within space between the big and the small skies. Why then is there a seed of fear in this field of harmony? These two persons are dressed like inhabitants of Vaikuntha, but wherefrom can their disharmony come into existence? And this is a question now that the Kumaras are asking. Purport. Just as there are different departments in each state in this material world, the civil department and the criminal department, so in God's creation, there are two departments of existence. As in the material world, we find that the criminal department is far, far smaller than the civil department. So this material world, which is considered the criminal department, is 1/4 of the entire creation of the Lord. All living entities who are residents of the material universes are considered to be more or less criminals because they do not wish to abide by the order of the Lord, or they are against the harmonious activities of God's will. The principle of creation is that the Supreme Lord, the Personality of God, is by nature joyful, and he becomes many in order to enhance his transcendental joy. The living entities, like ourselves, being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, are meant to satisfy the senses of the Lord. Thus, whenever there is a discrepancy in that harmony, immediately the living entity is entrapped by Maya or illusion. Okay, look, it's a long purport. I just want to go over this one point before we continue. The principle of creation is that the Supreme Lord, the Personality of God, is by nature joyful, and he becomes many in order to enhance his transcendental joy. Well, that's like a man and a woman get married, but they want to have children. Of course, nowadays, there are people that get married, they don't want to have children. But usually they want to have children. Why? To enhance their enjoyment. And here it says, the principle of creation is that the Supreme Lord, the Personality of God, is by nature joyful, and he becomes many, meaning he expands himself in the form of living entities in order to enhance his transcendental joy. In other words, the more the merrier. The more living entities that emanate from the Lord, the merrier, if they're acting properly, of course. In order to enhance his, meaning Krishna's transcendental joy. The living entities, like ourselves, being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, are meant to satisfy the senses of the Lord. Thus, whenever there is a discrepancy in that harmony, immediately the living entity is entrapped by Maya or illusion. So why are we existing as living entities? It's to give pleasure to us. Lord is happy in the association of genuine devotees. It enhances his happiness. So therefore he expands himself in the form of jivas to enhance his joy, his happiness. You can't be happy alone. You can be happy in relationship to others. And but if the living entities become sidetracked by Maya, then they're not pleased by giving pleasure to the Lord. They want to have sense gratification for themselves. Then that completely causes discrepancy, where everyone actually becomes a shy, a sense gratifier for themselves. So it says here, living entities like ourselves, being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, are meant to satisfy the senses of the Lord. So here, this explains what the real goal of life is. Most people believe the real goal of life is to please their own senses. Therefore, they're always doing things that are sense gratification for themselves. But the real purpose of life is to use our senses to please the senses of Krishna and Krishna's devotees. Then we're properly using our senses. So you see, this sense gratification doesn't stop in the higher stages of devotion service. It's still there, but it's pleasing the senses of Krishna rather than working to please our own senses. But if we please the senses of Krishna, we will also be pleased. You see how that works. If we just work for our own sense pleasure, that's going to be sinful. If we work to please the senses of Krishna, then that's the correct way to live. And by doing that, our senses will also be satisfied, because we're part and parcel of Krishna. We've all come from Krishna. If we please his senses, we will immediately be pleased also. Now, is that hard to understand? For some people, yes. For rational people, no, it's easy to understand. You please Krishna, you will also be pleased by the mercy of the Lord. You please on yourself and ignore Krishna, it's not going to be a good journey in this material world, because you'll get stuck in the material world birth after birth because of that selfishness. So what happens? Now let's say, and we can see examples of this, but they're perverted examples. Let's say there's some kind of a party, or there's some kind of an anniversary, and there's people invited to come, and they might be relatives or just good friends, and they're toasting. Toasting means, they get their wine glass, or they get whiskey or something, and they toast the person who's being, let's say, honored, and they're all smiling and happy, and they touch each other's glass of liquor, and then they drink it, and it looks like a jolly festival. Looks like they're all happy. Right? Well, that's a perverted reflection of the real thing. The real thing is glorifying Krishna by chanting and dancing for the pleasure of the Lord, and then sitting down and taking nice prasadam, and still glorifying the Lord. So it looks like the same thing. There's chanting, there's dancing, there's nice food and so forth. There's no liquor. That's a poison. But you don't need liquor to be genuinely intoxicated we get intoxicated with love for Krishna. It's a superior type of intoxication without any artificial substances like marijuana or whiskey or whatever. Whereas the karmis, they need those artificial intoxicants to, get happy. So therefore, when I was a kid, there would be like a New Year's Eve party, and the New Year's Eve party, it would not just be a family thing. We would go, and there would be a big hall, and a lot of relatives and friends would be there, and then in the beginning, everyone would be nicely dressed, and there'd be tables, and there'd be nice dinner, and then after the dinner, the music would start, and people would start dancing, and they'd be also, drinking liquor or wine or whatever, So coming close to, let's say, New Year's Eve, coming close to 12 o'clock, a lot of the people would, get a little rowdy because they were drinking a lot of liquor. And then when I was a kid, I'd be watching this. I would, of course, they wouldn't let me have the liquor, but they were drinking. And then after some time, some people drank too much liquor, so they would be, throwing up. Sometimes they call the ambulance, take them to the hospital. Sometimes it was fighting. I was watching this. I said, "Wow, this is really this is the way people really enjoy themselves." They have to throw up, and they have to go to the hospital, and then they get into fights, and so it was always like that. It was never like everyone behaved nicely. As soon as they started drinking, becoming rowdy and doing all kinds of crazy things, like one time I was at a picnic with all relatives and friends and things like that. I was just very young, and after some times, with the heat and the shish kebab and the beer and all that, I saw this one man. He came behind this one older man who was a very respectable person that everyone respected, but the person that suddenly, got a little bit of liquor and sunstroke at the same time. Came up behind him and grabbed him, and started squeezing him and lifted him up and squeezing his chest, and lifted him up, and broke
Ribs.
one of his ribs. And then they had to call the. I mean, this was out of love, right? Because he was showing his love by grabbing him and picked him up like that. And then they called the hospital. I mean, they called the ambulance. The ambulance came, and they had to take him to the hospital. And that's what happens when you're in an intoxicated state. You sometimes you do something crazy that you never would do normally. So in the Vaikuntha world, there's complete harmony between the residents and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just as there is complete harmony within space between the big and the small skies. Well, that's a nice example. Why then is there a seed of fear in this field of harmony? Well, why are these Jadai Mandai stopping us, the four Kumars, from entering into Vaikuntha?
Jai Vijay.
These two persons are dressed like inhabitants of Vaikuntha, but wherefrom can their disharmony come into existence? Okay. So just as there are different departments in each state in this material world, the civil department and the criminal department, so in God's creation, there are two departments of existence. As in the material world, we find that the criminal department is far, far smaller than the civil department. So this material world, which is considered the criminal department, is 1/4 of the entire creation of the Lord. All living entities who are residents of the material universes are considered to be more or less criminal because they do not wish to abide by the order of the Lord, or they are against the harmonious activities of God's will. The principle of creation is that the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, is by nature joyful, and he becomes many in order to enhance his transcendental joy. It means he produces many living entities, human beings, to enhance his transcendental joy. Just like in a family, when there's just husband and wife, they want to enhance their joy, so they begin to have children. And that's to enhance their joy. And the Lord does the same thing, but to enhance his transcendental joy. The living entities like ourselves. I remember when my brothers, after he got his first child, I remember that the baby was maybe, I don't know, 1 or 2 months old. And he would spend hours, holding the baby and cuddling the baby and just, enamored completely by the fact, this first baby born. And I would watch this, I would see, he was like totally involved in with the miracle of the baby in his arms. But you're two people, and now there's three. It's like a miracle. The baby is completely dependent on the father and mother. Okay, so all living entities who are residents of the material universes are considered to be more or less criminals because they do not wish to abide by the order of the Lord, or they are against the harmonious activities of God's will. Yeah, like this past weekend, there were harmonious activities of the devotees in the festival, and everyone was happy. There wasn't any, disrespectable behavior by anyone. And because of that, everyone was happy and it was harmonious. Everyone was on the same, let's say, wavelength of glorifying Balaji and serving Balaji. And that's a glimpse of what happens in the spiritual world. All living entities who are residents of the material universes are considered to be more or less criminals because they do not wish to abide by the order of the Lord, or they are against the harmonious activities of God's will. The principle of creation is that the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, is by nature joyful, and he becomes many, meaning he produces many living entities in order to enhance his transcendental joy. So if we engage in the service of the Lord, that's what we're meant to do, to enhance the Lord's transcendental joy. The living entities, like ourselves, being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, are meant to satisfy the senses of the Lord. This is why we came into existence, because we're eternal. But the Lord multiplies us to enhance his transcendental happiness. So, how is it that the real purpose of the Lord having so many living entities gets contaminated, and now people are selfishly just trying to please themselves instead of trying to please the Lord? That's the big question. The living entities, like ourselves, being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, are meant to satisfy the senses of the Lord. Thus, whenever there is a discrepancy in that harmony, immediately the living entity is entrapped by Maya or illusion. Okay, now it's a big long purport because this is the real issue about living in the material world. The external energy of the Lord is called the material world, and the kingdom of the internal energy of the Lord is called Vaikuntha, or the kingdom of God. In the Vaikuntha world, there is no disharmony between the Lord and the residents. Therefore, God's creation in the Vaikuntha world is perfect. There is no cause of fear. The entire kingdom of God is such a completely harmonious unit that there's no possibility of enmity. Enmity means, jealousy, anger, lack of respect, all those bad things. Everything there is everything there is absolute. Just as there are many physiological constructions within the body, yet they work in one order for the satisfaction of the stomach. And just as in a machine, there are hundreds of thousands of parts, yet they run in harmony to fulfill the function of the machine. In the Vaikuntha planets, the Lord is perfect, and the inhabitants are perfectly engaged in the service of the Lord. The Mayavadi philosophers, the impersonalists, interpret this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam to mean that the small sky and the big sky are one. But this idea cannot stand. The example of the big sky and the small skies is also applicable within a person's body. The big sky is the body itself, and the intestines and other parts of the body occupy the small sky. Each and every part of the body has individuality, even though occupying a small part of the total body. Similarly, the whole creation is the body of the Supreme Lord, and we created beings, or anything that is created, are but small parts of that body. The parts of the body are never equal to the whole. That is never possible. In Bhagavad Gita it is said that the living entities who are parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord are eternally parts and parcels. According to the Mayavadi philosophers, the living entities in illusion considers himself part and parcel, although is actually one and the same as the Supreme Whole. This theory is not valid. The oneness of the whole and the part is in their quality. The qualitative oneness of the small and large portions of the sky does not imply that the small sky becomes the big sky. Okay. So this is an explanation of Krishna consciousness. In Krishna consciousness, we understand that we are part and parcel, but we're not the whole. So part and parcel means, even though we're part of the whole, we still maintain our individuality, and Krishna maintains his individuality. The Mayavadi basically destroys that transcendental harmony and says that the little body becomes merged into big body and it's all one. And in order to merge like that, you have to give up your individuality. So, and oftentimes the Mayavadis just say, well, you got to kill the ego. Have you ever heard that? Kill the ego. Actually, that's not possible. And that's not the perfect stage of what killing. The ego means I am. So if you kill the I, there's no person there anymore. They're no longer a unique person. So we don't want to kill the ego. We want to purify the ego. That's the difference between Krishna consciousness and the Mayavadi. They want to kill the ego, and we want to purify the ego so that we just engage in service to the Lord with love and devotion. You kill the ego, there's no more service. There's no more devotion. There's, imagine oneness, and they think that imagine oneness, that's the goal, and it's not at all. And that's actually a suicide, because you're trying to kill who you are. But when you have purified yourself, then you're one in purpose with the Lord. Just like if the son always follows the instructions of the father, then the son is a representative of the father. They're in oneness. Whether you meet the father or meet the son, they both have the same, let's say, culture of respect and devotion and so forth. The Mayavadi philosophers and impersonalists interpret this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam to mean that the small sky and the big sky are one. But this idea cannot stand. The example of the big sky and small skies is also applicable within a person's body. The big size is the body itself, and the intestines and the other parts of the body occupy the small sky. Each and every part of the body has individuality, even though occupying a small part of the total body. Similarly, the whole creation is the body of the Supreme Lord, and we created beings, or anything that is created, are but small parts of that body. The parts of the body are never equal to the whole. This is never possible. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the living entities were parts and parcels. Whenever it says parts, and then adds parcels, that means we always remain individual. Although we're connected to the word, we're part. And parcel means, yes, we are a part of the Lord, but we maintain our individuality. And that means we are always dependent on the Lord. The Lord is always greater than we are, but we are connected now to the Lord through devotional service. Each and every part of the body has individuality. And that's a statement that the Mayavadis would probably disagree with. Each and every part of the body has individuality, even though occupying a small part of the total body. Similarly, the whole creation is the body of the Supreme Lord, and we created beings, or anything that is created, are but a small part of that body, Krishna's body. The parts of the body are never equal to the whole. This is never possible. So this is simultaneously one and different. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the living entities who are parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord are eternal parts and parcels. Nobody can change it. That's the natural position. According to the Mayavadi philosophers, the living entity in illusion considers himself part and parcel, although he is actually one and the same as the Supreme Whole. Let's read that again. According to the Mayavadi philosophy, the living entity in illusion considers himself part and parcel, although he is actually one and the same as the Supreme Whole. This theory is not valid. The oneness of the whole and the part is in their quality. The qualitative oneness of the small and large portions of the sky does not imply that the small sky becomes the big sky. So in other words, the drop of ocean water is part and parcel of the ocean. And the drop of the ocean is the same qualities as the whole ocean, but it's not the whole ocean, it was a minute part of the ocean. The Mayavadi is saying that if you become one, then you become the whole ocean. What they don't understand, if there's a drop of water, like rainwater, it falls into the ocean, it doesn't lose its individuality. But it merges, but it doesn't lose individuality. With the Mayavadi, we say, well, it's merged. It's become one. So a fish, when they're in the water, you don't see them. But when they jump up out of the water, you see them. Then they fall into the water, back into the water. Now they've become one with the water, but not really, because they're still one. They're still individuals, but they're able to jump up out of the water, and then you see them, and they jump back in the water, and they merge back in the water, and you think, oh, now it's become one. But no, they're still there. Right? So the Mayavadis say, no, it's all become one. Right? But that's not true.
Yes, time check.
Okay. All right, we'll stop right there. Are there any questions?
Hare Krishna, any questions online? You can go off of mute.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, one big question.
So,
Maharaj, Jaya and Vijaya, they have done the right, they have done the duty, right? I understand that they are not supposed to stop, but when they are interested to a certain duty, they were really checking it, right? In what in a materialistic world, they actually, if you ask me, they are doing the duty. But when we read this particular instance, they need to allow, in that means that they need to understand without talking something, this is where I'm not able to connect, because they were doing the duty. For that, such a big punishment has come to them, why, Maharaj, in that way?
well, it's a blessing also for them because they get to see the Lord.
Yeah.
Well, their duty, just like, let's say, you are on duty as Jaya and Vijaya, but not in the spiritual world, but in the material world, you can be a chauffeur or you can be a guard. Right? So when the owner of the company comes and you block him from coming in, because that's your job, you have to make a decision who can come in and who doesn't come in. But you make a mistake and you block the owner of the company from coming in, you made a mistake, right? Or you block the family of the owner, you make a mistake. So that's basically what's happening here. They're making the Jaya making a mistake and stopping the four Kumaras from coming into Vaikuntha, not recognizing. And first of all, the four Kumaras are young boys, very, very, very young boys, like kids, So they're right away, that's, confuses Jaya and Vijay. What these kids are going to do here? Why are they here? They don't understand that they're transcendental pure devotees. So it's due to, let's say, ignorance that they, the type of ignorance that they refuse to let them come in. And because of that, Jaya and the Kumaras became upset. Rather than try and understand who they are, they just summarily made a decision not to let them come in. And that was a mistake. Now, why that happened? Now, let's teach us a lesson. The lesson is that, like, for example, when a pure devotee appears in this world, if you're not able to recognize the person as a pure devotee, you'll make a mistake. How to recognize if someone's a pure devotee? Well, there are the qualifications that you have to see. If the person has no material desires, if the person is completely dedicated to serving Krishna. But sometimes people make a mistake and they're not able to understand the symptoms of a pure devotee, and they might accept someone who's completely not qualified to be a pure devotee, or they see a pure devotee, but they treat them like an ordinary person.
Right.
So it's all due to what you would call ignorance. So we have to be very careful in life not to judge people right away, but to see who they are by what they say and their actions. So that's part of life. You learn not to judge people right away, but to hear them say, talk, and see what they eat, and see what their activities are, and then you can decide whether this is a qualified Vaishnava or this is a fake Vaishnava. Like there was this one man that came here years ago, many years ago. And he was born in Navadvip. And he was in a family of one of the families of what do you call those? And his whole his family. And he could sing very nicely, bhajanas and dance. And but he had bad habits. He was always philandering with women, and he would smoke sometimes. So I didn't see that right away, but over time I could see that he had a strong attraction for women, and sometimes he would smoke marijuana. Then I understood. Although he's born in Navadvip, although he comes from a Vaishnava family, well, it was like alls and bowls and all those sampradayas, upper sampradayas, all sampradayas. Yeah. So he came from that tradition, and I didn't see it at first, but then by associating him with him, then I actually saw what he actually was. And then he started calling me all the time. He said, "When's the next program? When's the next program?" I said, "Well, we don't have a program right now, but I'll call you. You don't have to call me. I'll call you." So you can only understand a person by watching them and hearing what they're saying. And over time, they're going to reveal who they are. Whether they're actually a genuine devotee, or whether they're a devotee with bad habits, or whether they're just pretending to be a devotee, or whether they're a demon in the dress of a devotee. You will understand over time. So you shouldn't judge a person right away. You should give them a chance to show their colors. And then you will be able to make a decision. So many people come to the temple. And previous times, it was like we would accept people to live in the temple. And sometimes devotees would make a quick decision to let anybody who seemed to be, enthusiastic to live in the temple, right away they'd take them in. And that was a big mistake. So sometimes people would come, and I would never let them stay right away in the temple. Because I had to know, who they were. You can't just believe what they say. You have to vet them before you can let them actually stay in the temple. And sometimes they get a little upset. I know this one person, my good friend now, but when he first came to the temple, I didn't let him stay in the temple, and he got really upset. But I told him, "Look, you just come for a couple of times. Let me just see who you are, and then I'll let you stay in the temple." So every time I see him, I meet him somewhere, he always remembers that. He said, "When I first came to the temple, you didn't let me stay in the temple. You thought I was some stranger or something." I said, "Well, I didn't know who you were, But after some time, I realized that you were a sincere person." So he's like jokingly, poking me like that. But we have to be careful to let people stay in the temple, because they're going to sleep next to other devotees. And if we let unqualified people right away enter the temple, it'll chase away the good people. So, but here the Kumaras made a mistake. I mean, the Jaya Vijaya made a mistake, and the Kumaras become upset and they curse him. So we'll continue reading about that. Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol.
Krishna Maharaji,
Yes.
I have a question. In this earth, we take a birth as a human body, So in Vaikuntha, we take as a Vaikuntha body, and how we communicate and what's the way, process we get the body that will.
So in the human body, we take this body, in the human life, the earthly planets, we take this. In Vaikuntha planets,
Yeah.
what kind of body do we have and how do we
You have 4 arms.
4 arms, you'll get it, Mataji.
So we know you're not in Vaikuntha right now. I'm not also, because we only have 2 arms. When you have 4 arms, then you know you're in Vaikuntha. Does that answer your question?
Mataji, did you have any follow-up question?
Yeah, in Vaikuntha, how we communicate, what to get a body like that.
Like basically, how do we communicate, and do we have body just similar to this, but obviously with 4 arms?
Yeah, we have spiritual senses.
Yeah.
You develop many transcendental qualities when you have 4 arms. And every day you're glorifying the Lord with choice mantras, and you're always engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, so much so that you're not disturbed by anything, and nothing can stop you from doing your service. Sometimes there are things that sometimes people say things that you feel hurt and you stop doing service. But when you're completely involved in Krishna consciousness, you don't let anything like that stop you from engaging in service. Because you don't have a false ego. Your ego is only to please Krishna. So when
Yes. So,
go ahead.
Go ahead, ma'am.
yeah, so we will do the service, we will do the seva, so we will get any body, any place like this earth.
I mean, you'll continue to have a spiritual body with, obviously that's with 4 arms, and you will develop all the qualities, the divine qualities, so that you can completely serve the Lord. Now, is that right, Maharaj?
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't grow 2 more arms.
Yeah.
But those people that we're talking about here, people who are, completely in this life, completely liberated, they do manifest 4 arms. Right? But that's not the real thing. The real thing is that you're always engaged in devotional service. Nothing can take you away from it. Then you're a liberated person. Maybe in the next life you get 4 arms. Okay, but right now, the symptom that determines your spiritual position is the fact that you have so much faith in Krishna that nothing can shake your faith, nothing can make you lose your faith, and you always remain engaged in the service of the Lord. So there's this one lady in Berkeley, California. She's been serving for like 55 years or more, and she's never left the temple. And she was not interested in getting married or anything like that. And she's old now, but she's still continuing her service. But that's the sign of a real devotee. They persevere through all different conditions and never leave their service. And they're happy because if they serve the deity nicely, they feel very happy. And they're really kind. Anybody comes to the temple, this lady, anybody comes to the temple, she greets them nicely, she gives them prasada, she talks to them, she gives them a chance to see the deities and so forth. So there are special people like that are completely dedicated to devotional service. And although, you've never heard her name, and if you meet her, you wouldn't know that she's such an exalted person because she has no no desire to, be identified as a pure devotee. But she is a pure devotee. Her whole life is dedicated. I've done like 50 years or more. Always there, always taking care of the deities in Berkeley, California, which is a difficult place to live. It's really crazy. But she is kind to everyone. And everyone respects her. Everyone respects her. So, the whole point is not leaving your service. And that's one, a criterion to understand that the person is really genuine, that they never leave their service. And they're always on time, and they're always clean, and they're always happy, and they're always helping others, also trying to explain to them everything about Krishna consciousness. So those are very special people. We should try to have their association and learn from them how to be a steadily engaged devotional service devotee. And if you ever go to Berkeley, California, you will see her. You'll recognize her right away.
Very good.
Okay, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. We'll see you again in the evening.
Yeah, there are devotees like that every time.